Thanks so much. Joined now by Penn State defensive coordinator Brent Pry. And let's start off with a tough topic, defensive tackles. Obviously, this was a position you guys early on were stocked at. And then between October and the last week, 3 of your 4 recruits, they flipped their decisions. And you're left regrouping. And suddenly defensive tackle's a position of need. How do you go about that? And obviously, next we'll talk about your late commits that you did fill those positions with.
I think you always, Coach Franklin does a great job of ensuring that we have a solid list of prospects, regardless if we've met our quota. It gets a little more difficult once you fill up at a position to continue to recruit those players, but we do our best. And we've all been in it long enough to know that things can happen. Even with the most certain families that you feel very comfortable are going to join you, there's a lot of time and a lot of things that can happen between a commitment and the actual signing period. So I think that's one of the areas that it's tough for us as assistants. Coach Franklin continues to push us that direction. We work really hard on those guys that aren't in the boat, that are on that list that still need to be recruited as possible candidates if something should happen. And that was the case of defensive tackle this year. I think we had a strong list. We were fortunate early to get several commitments, and we had to turn down some awful good players. Some of those guys we were able to re-recruit. When things shifted, some of them we weren't. But hopefully you have enough on your list that you still have some good candidates, which we did.
Speaking of good candidates, so you're left with 4-star Baltimore recruit Elson Jordan. Of course, he signed his letter today. But then you guys really, this weekend into today, just were burning the midnight oil. You add Ohio 3-star defensive tackle Antonio Shelton. Last night, Tyrell Chavis, the New York JUCO recruit. And then a surprise today when you added Brennan Thrift, the defensive tackle out of JUCO here in Pennsylvania. So tell me about the process and how confident you are with this group you have now that you've been able to regroup and stock your DTs.
Yeah, I think one thing we were able to do was bring in a couple more mature players that we feel like can help us a little bit sooner. With the departure of A.J. Johnson, that shifted things in our recruiting room, what we needed to do at defensive tackle. When he decided to leave and declare for the draft, we need to make sure we got enough experience in the room. And so the junior college guys became real viable. We've been recruiting 2 of those 3 guys for a long time, to be honest, back before the holidays and before the decommitments. We had a couple of those guys, particularly Chavis was here for a game in the fall. He was one of those guys on our A list that we really wanted to have a chance to get and filled up initially before we could get to him. So we're really excited about him jumping on board. He's a big guy that moves well, unblockable at the junior college level. You can ask any of the opponents that he faced. He was the number 1 guy they saw all year. So he's a guy that can come in and instantly bring some experience and some size. Brennan Thrift, again, a mature guy that we know all about. He's a Pennsylvania kid. Coach Smith coached him in high school. We've been on this guy for a while. We weren't sure what to do with him. Was he an end? Was he a tackle? What were our needs? Some things shifted within our program, to be honest, that really put an exclamation point on Brennan and our needs for him and how it aligned, what a good fit. He's an active defensive tackle that has some experience on the edge. He's a guy that fits a different role than Chavis. He's a guy that can run sideline to sideline. He's a little bit smaller but very athletic and has a great motor and an unbelievable football IQ. So we're very excited about him. And then I really think we did a super job with Antonio Shelton, the high school young man from Ohio. To me, this is an upgrade in a lot of ways. He's very athletic. He's got size. He's got personality. He's sharp, great family. To me, he brings a lot of production coupled with his skill set and his size. He's a guy that maybe from some other guys who are on that original list, he's more polished. He's more the total package. He's a late bloomer. He's a kid that had a very average junior year, had an incredible off season, and when you look at his senior film, I think it's one of the best in the country. I think this is a 4 or 5 star guy that has the size, the speed, the quickness, and the intelligence to be a great player at Penn State.
Finally, Coach, just a real quick overall grade, especially from the defensive side. How do you feel about the class coming in? I know there were some big shoes to fill, and then there were some flips, but that's recruiting in the Big Ten, obviously.
Right.
How would you overall grade this year's class?
Yeah, I'm very excited about the group we're bringing in. I think we've met our needs. We really wanted to go hard up front, and we did that. We've got back-to-back classes of really good defensive linemen, and that's where it starts. We've got a good group of young guys in the secondary that we signed last year, and I think the guys in this year's class are great complements. There's not going to be pressure on them early. They're going to have a chance to develop. I think the linebacker, Cam Brown, exceptional guy that has the skill set and the length and things to maybe help us as a freshman. So, we've got some bona fide ends, some speed guys that we haven't had in Shaka Toney and Shane Simmons. Daniel Joseph is a utility guy up front, tremendous skill set, played linebacker a bunch this year. So I'm very excited about each and every one of these guys. I think they all fit a role, fill a need. Some of them are going to be asked to play earlier than others. Again, when we looked at things after the coaching change and some personnel moves we wanted to make internally, it shifted some focus in the recruiting picture, and that's something that kind of happens behind the scenes that affects what we do, and and some of it shows up on recruiting day, on signing day.
Well, thank you so much, and congrats on a successful recruiting class. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.